The first sign came when Dylan Hayes reached for his wife's hand across the dining room table, and she pulled away like his touch might burn her. "You okay?" he asked, setting down his fork. The spaghetti he'd made was going cold. His daughter Maddie already finished and watching them both with quiet 7-year-old eyes. "Fine," Leah said, not meeting his gaze. "Just tired. It's been a long day with my coaching sessions." Dylan nodded, though something in his gut tightened. The coaching sessions with Brian Quinn had started 3 months ago. Since then, his wife had grown distant, disappearing into what she called her healing journey. Dylan had tried to be supportive, but lately he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. "Daddy, can we watch a movie tonight?" Maddie asked, breaking the silence with her gap-toothed smile. "Sure thing, Pumpkin," Dylan said, reaching over to ruffle her dark hair, so much like his own. "You pick. Just nothing too scary, okay?" "I'm going to lie down," Leah announced, standing abruptly. "My head is eliminating me." Dylan watched his wife walk away, her shoulders tense, her steps hurried. 7 years of marriage, and suddenly she was a stranger. "Is Mommy mad at us?" Maddie whispered. Dylan forced a smile. "No, baby. Sometimes grown-ups just need space. She'll be better tomorrow." But she wasn't, or the day after. The frost between them grew, and Dylan found himself walking on eggshells in his own home. The university maintenance department where he worked as lead supervisor became his refuge, a place where broken things made sense, where problems had solutions. A week later, he came home to find 2 police cruisers parked outside his modest 2-story house. His heart hammered against his ribs as he killed the engine of his truck. Officer Ramirez, whom Dylan knew from the neighborhood watch meetings, stood at the door with another cop Dylan didn't recognize. "Dylan Hayes?" the second officer asked, face grim. "What's going on?" Dylan looked past them, searching for signs of his family. "Where's my wife and daughter?" "Sir, we need you to come with us," Officer Ramirez said, not meeting Dylan's eyes. "Your wife has filed a domestic violence report against you." Dylan's world tilted. "She what?" "She's claiming you struck her last night during an argument," the other officer said. "She has visible bruising on her face and arms." "That's impossible!" Dylan's voice rose. "I never touched her. We didn't even argue last night. Sir, please stay calm and put your hands where we can see them," Officer Ramirez interrupted, his hand moving to his belt. "We have an arrest warrant." "We need you to come with us, now!" Dylan's mind raced as cold metal handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The neighbors were watching from behind curtains. Mrs. Donovan across the street stood openly on her porch, phone in hand, probably already spreading the news through the neighborhood group chat. "Where's my daughter?" His voice breaking. "She's with her mother at a safe location," the officer told him as they guided him toward the patrol car. The jail cell was cold, the bench harder than concrete. Dylan sat with his head in his hands, replaying every moment of the past week, searching for anything that might explain this nightmare. "Hayes," a guard called hours later, "your lawyer's here." The public defender assigned to his case was young, clearly overworked, but she listened as Dylan frantically explained. "I never touched her. We've been having problems, but nothing like this. She's lying." "The photos are pretty convincing," the lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, said carefully. "Your wife has bruising on her left cheek, her right arm, and her side." "That's impossible," Dylan insisted. "I was home last night. We ate dinner. I watched TV while she worked on her laptop. Then we went to bed. Separate rooms lately, but—" He stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Not because I'm violent, because she wanted space." Sarah nodded. "The prosecutor isn't filing formal charges yet. They want to review the evidence. The judge has granted your release on bail, but there's a temporary restraining order. You can't go within 500 feet of your wife or daughter." Dylan felt like he'd been punched. "My daughter? They think I'd hurt my own child?" "It's standard procedure," Sarah explained. "Listen, Mr. Hayes, the good news is you're getting out today. The bad news is you can't go home. Do you have somewhere to stay?" The motel room smelled of industrial cleaner and cigarettes. Dylan sat on the edge of the bed, his few hastily packed belongings in a duffel bag beside him. His brother Marcus had paid his bail and driven him here. "You need anything else?" Marcus asked from the doorway. Dylan shook his head. "Just need to figure this out. Need to talk to Leah." "You can't," Marcus reminded him. "Of the restraining order." "I know what the order says," Dylan snapped, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, This is insane, Marcus. She's setting me up. I don't know why." Marcus sighed. I believe you. Don't do anything stupid. We'll figure it out the right way. After his brother left, Dylan called his neighbor, Tom, who lived across the street. Hey, Tom, it's Dylan Hayes. Dylan? Tom's voice was cautious. Man, what the hell? I need your help. I swear to God, I didn't do what they're saying. A pause. What do you need? You've got those security cameras covering your front yard, right? The ones that can see my driveway. Yeah. Can you check the footage from the last few days? See if Leah came or went looking injured? Another long pause. I shouldn't get involved in this, man. Please, Tom. I'm being set up. I need the truth. Eventually, Tom agreed. An hour later, he texted Dylan. Checked footage. Leah left yesterday morning at 9 a.m. looking normal. No visible bruises. Back at 2 p.m. Cops came at 5. No footage of what happened inside, obviously. Dylan stared at the message, a small flame of hope igniting. He had proof, or at least the beginning of proof, that something wasn't adding up. The next morning, he drove back to his house, parking down the street, just to see if Leah and Maddie were still there. He needed to know his daughter was okay. The house looked empty. His truck was gone from the driveway. Had Leah taken it? As he was about to leave, a locksmith's van pulled up. Dylan watched, stomach sinking, as a man got out and approached his front door. They were changing the locks. His phone buzzed with an email notification from his bank. Account access temporarily frozen due to a legal dispute. Then came the text from his boss. Dylan, we need to talk about your position. Administrative leave, effective immediately, until this situation is resolved. His life was being systematically dismantled around him, piece by piece. That evening, he drove by the park near Maddie's school, the one she loved with the big red slide. And there they were, Leah, looking perfectly uninjured, holding hands with a tall man Dylan recognized immediately. Brian Quinn, the life coach, the man who had been healing his wife. And between them, swinging their hands, was Maddie. Dylan ducked down in his seat as they passed, heart thundering. Now, he knew. This wasn't just about Leah leaving him. This was a calculated attack, a way to take everything, including his daughter. As he watched them walk to a shiny black SUV he'd never seen before, Dylan made a silent promise to himself and to Maddie. They think they've won. They think I'll break. But they have no idea what I'm capable of. 2 days passed before Dylan formulated his plan. His years running the maintenance department had taught him that rushing only created bigger problems. You had to study the system first, find the weak points, the pressure valves, the hidden switches. He'd never considered those skills would be necessary to reclaim his own life. The small storage unit he'd rented became his war room. A corkboard covered one wall, red string connecting photos, notes, and printouts. He wasn't losing his mind. He was mapping his way back to his daughter. First target, Brian Quinn. Dylan had done his research. Brian was more than Leah's spiritual advisor. He was a mid-level realtor with Cornerstone Properties, specializing in quick flips and cash deals. His company bio boasted about his intuitive approach to client needs and his background in transformational leadership. What it didn't mention was the restraining order filed against him 3 years ago by an ex-girlfriend in Colorado, or the sealed court records from Nevada. Dylan had paid a finder service $200 to dig those up. Today, Dylan was parked across from Cornerstone's office in a borrowed car, Marcus's old Honda that smelled like fast food and gym clothes. A baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He watched Brian exit the building at 5:45 p.m., exactly as he had the previous 2 days. Expensive shoes, tailored slacks, perfect hair. He climbed into his black Audi SUV, the same one Dylan had seen at the park, and pulled out of the parking lot. Dylan followed at a careful distance, staying 2 cars back. He'd done this yesterday, too, tracking Brian to a coffee shop, then to a client meeting, then finally to a small rental home on the edge of town, where Leah and Maddie were staying. Today, though, Brian took a different route. He drove to the outskirts of town, then turned onto a service road that led to an abandoned strip mall. Dylan hung back, watching as Brian parked behind the derelict buildings. 5 minutes later, Dylan's missing truck pulled in. Dylan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Someone was driving his vehicle, a man he didn't recognize. The man got out, handed something to Brian, then got into Brian's Audi and drove away. Brian climbed into Dylan's truck and followed. What the hell? Dylan trailed them to a wooded area 20 miles outside of town. Brian parked the truck in a clearing, got out, and was picked up by the man in the Audi. After they left, Dylan approached his abandoned truck cautiously. The doors were unlocked. Inside, he found empty beer cans scattered across the passenger seat, a half-empty whiskey bottle on the floor. His maintenance uniform jacket, which had been missing from his locker, was crumpled in the back seat. They were setting up a scene. But for what? Dylan didn't touch anything. Instead, he took photos with his phone, documenting everything. Then he backed away and called the one person he knew might still help him. "Eddie, it's Dylan Hayes." I need a favor." Eddie Carver had worked security at the university for 20 years. He and Dylan had become friends over countless maintenance calls and shared lunches. "Jesus, Dylan," Eddie said. "I heard what happened." "They're saying it's nonsense," Dylan cut in. "All of it. I'm being set up, and I think I know why, but I need your help." An hour later, they met at a 24-hour diner off the highway. Eddie looked nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. "I shouldn't be talking to you," he said. "The university made it clear. No contact until this is resolved." "I found my truck," Dylan said, sliding his phone across the table to show Eddie the photos. "They're staging something, making it look like I've been drinking, maybe planning to crash it somewhere and claim I was on a bender." Eddie studied the photos. "That's messed up, but what do you want me to do about it?" "The grocery store on Miller Street. Leah shops there every Saturday. She would have been there the day before she claimed I punch her. They have security cameras." Eddie frowned. "You want footage? I need to prove she didn't have bruises before she went to the police." "That's not exactly legal, Dylan. Neither is framing someone for domestic violence to steal their kid." Eddie sighed. "I know the night manager there. I'll see what I can do." 3 days later, Eddie delivered a thumb drive. "Saturday footage, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Your wife was there around 2. Shopping like normal. No injuries I could see." Dylan could have hugged him. "Thank you. This could help save my life." "Be careful," Eddie warned. "These people, whoever they are, they've thought this through. They're not going to just back down because you've got some footage." Dylan nodded grimly. "I know, but it's a start." The cheap motel had become Dylan's temporary home. He'd pinned maps and photos to the walls with thumbtacks, creating a visual record of Brian and Leah's movements. It looked like the work of a madman, but to Dylan, it was the only thing keeping him sane. He'd started working with a real lawyer now, Ellen Wright, a sharp-eyed family law attorney who'd taken an interest in his case. "The grocery store footage is good," Ellen told him over the phone, "but we need more. The judge will want to see a pattern of deception, not just one incident." "I'm working on it," Dylan assured her. His next break came accidentally. He'd been watching Brian's office again when he saw Leah rush out to the parking lot, face streaked with tears. Something had happened. Dylan ducked down as she stormed past his car, then followed on foot as she walked to a nearby park and collapsed onto a bench. Without thinking, he approached her. "Leah!" She looked up, eyes wide with shock and fear. "Dylan, you can't be here!" "The restraining order is based on lies," he finished, keeping his distance. "We both know that." Her face hardened. "You need to leave before I call the police." "Why are you doing this?" Dylan asked. "What did I do that was so terrible you had to destroy me? Take my daughter?" "You wouldn't understand," she said, looking away. "You never did. Always stuck in your routine, your simple little world of broken pipes and faulty wiring, never seeing the bigger picture. Brian showed me what life could be." "So, file for divorce," Dylan said. "That's your right. But the fake aggression charges? Turning Maddie against me?" "I needed a clean break," she said coldly. "And in this town, in this state, the only way a mother loses custody is if she's unfit. I wasn't taking that chance." Dylan stared at her, a stranger wearing his wife's face. "What happened to you?" "I woke up," she snapped. "And now I'm taking what I deserve. Where's Maddie? Is she okay?" Something flickered across Leah's face. Guilt, perhaps. "She's fine. She's adjusting." To believing her father is a monster? Dylan stepped closer. "Is that what you're teaching her?" Leah stood up. "I'm leaving. If you follow me, I'm calling the police." "Tell Brian I found my truck," Dylan said as she turned to go. "Tell him I know what you're planning." "And it's not going to work." For a second, fear flashed in her eyes. Then she was gone, walking quickly away, phone already pressed to her ear. That night, Dylan followed Brian again. This time, the realtor drove to a bar downtown where he met a woman Dylan didn't recognize. They talked intently for an hour, Brian showing her something on his phone that made her nod repeatedly. When the woman left, Dylan followed her to her car. As she fumbled for her keys, he approached. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his distance. "I need to ask you something about Brian Quinn." She turned, startled. "Who are you?" "My name's Dylan Hayes. Brian is involved with my wife, Leah. They're trying to take my daughter from me." The woman's expression changed from fear to something like pity. "You're the husband. What did he tell you about me?" She hesitated. "That you're dangerous, that you hurt your wife, and they're afraid for the little girl." Dylan's jaw tightened. "Did he ask you to testify? To say you saw something?" Her silence was answer enough. "Whatever he's paying you," Dylan said quietly, "it's not worth becoming part of a crime, because that's what this is. They're framing me." He showed her the grocery store footage on his phone. "That's my wife the day before she claimed I kick her. No bruises, no injuries." The woman stared at the screen, then back at Dylan. "I just met Brian at a real estate seminar last month. He said he needed character witnesses for a friend going through a bad divorce. He offered to help me get started in the business." "For a price?" Dylan guessed. She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I wouldn't have agreed if I'd known what was really happening." "What's your name?" "Tessa. Tessa Lind." "Tessa, if you want to do the right thing, call this number." Dylan handed her a card with Ellen Wright's contact information. "My lawyer would be very interested in what Brian asked you to do." As he walked away, Dylan heard her call after him. "Be careful, he talks about you like you're already gone." The warning followed him back to his motel room, where he added Tessa's name to his growing wall of evidence. 2 days later, Ellen called him with news. "Leah filed paperwork claiming she's pregnant," the lawyer said without preamble. "She's seeking permanent custody on grounds that stress from contact with you might endanger the pregnancy." Dylan felt like he'd been gut-punched. "She's pregnant?" "That's what she's claiming," Ellen said. "The court date for the permanent custody hearing has been moved up. We have 2 weeks." A baby, another child he might never know, never see grow up, a half-sibling for Maddie. Unless, an hour later, he was parked outside a pharmacy 3 towns over. He'd been tracking Leah's movements for weeks now, knew her routines. And sure enough, at 2:15, she pulled into the parking lot. Dylan watched from his car as she entered the store. 10 minutes later, she emerged with a small bag and drove away. He went inside and approached the pharmacist. "Excuse me, my wife was just in here. Brunette, blue sweater. She picked up a prescription for me, but I think she might have forgotten something else I needed." The pharmacist frowned. "I don't remember any prescriptions, but she did buy a home pregnancy test." Dylan nodded, heart pounding. "Right, that's it. Thank you." Back in his car, he processed this information. Why would Leah need a test if she was already pregnant? Pregnant enough to file court documents about it? The answer was obvious. Another lie, another manipulation. The next day, he waited outside the rental house where Leah and Maddie were staying. When he saw his daughter emerge with Brian for their daily walk to the corner store, he nearly broke the restraining order right there. But he held back, watching as Brian ruffled Maddie's hair, a gesture that had once been Dylan's alone. His phone buzzed. A text from Ellen. "Tessa Lind called. She's willing to testify about Brian's approach. This is good." Finally, a break. But Dylan knew it wouldn't be enough. He needed more, needed to find the heart of their scheme. That night, he returned to where Brian had abandoned his truck. It was still there, untouched. Dylan approached cautiously, checking for cameras or witnesses. Finding none, he used his spare key to open the door. The interior smelled of booze and cigarettes, neither of which Dylan used. He searched carefully, looking for anything that might explain their plan. Under the seat, his fingers touched something hard and plastic. A burner phone. Heart racing, Dylan turned it on. No password protection. The call log showed multiple calls to and from the same number. The text messages were more revealing. "Did you stage the photos like I showed you? Yes. Use the makeup like you said. Looks real. Perfect. After the report, we need a more permanent solution. Something to keep him away for good. I've got a plan. What about Em? She keeps asking for him. Kids adjust. Once we're in California, she'll forget all about Daddy." Dylan's blood ran cold. They were planning to leave the state, to take his daughter where he couldn't find her. As he was reading, headlights swept across the clearing. Dylan ducked down, peering over the dashboard. Brian's Audi. He had seconds to decide, confront Brian here, now, or preserve the evidence. Dylan slipped out the passenger side, phone in hand, and disappeared into the trees just as Brian pulled up. From his hiding spot, he watched as Brian approached the truck, looking around nervously before opening the door. Brian's curse was audible even from a distance. He was searching for something. The burner phone, Dylan realized. Brian tore through the truck, growing increasingly frantic. Finally, he gave up, slamming the door and kicking the tire in frustration before returning to his Audi. As he drove away, Dylan emerged from the trees, the phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. It wasn't just evidence of their lies anymore. It was proof of a conspiracy and his ticket to getting Maddie back. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, all granite and columns and unforgiving angles. Dylan straightened his tie, borrowed from Marcus like the suit, and followed Ellen Wright through the imposing doors. "Remember," Ellen whispered as they walked, "the judge needs to see someone calm and reasonable." Dylan nodded, though calm was the last thing he felt. The past 3 weeks had been a blur of evidence gathering, legal filings, and sleepless nights. His entire case and his entire future with his daughter came down to today's hearing. Across the marble lobby, he spotted Leah with her attorney, a hawk-faced woman in an expensive suit. Brian stood slightly behind them, hand possessively at the small of Leah's back. When Brian noticed Dylan watching, he whispered something in Leah's ear. She turned, her face a mask of practiced fear. "Your Honor," Ellen began once they were in the courtroom, "we're requesting an immediate dismissal of the temporary custody order against my client Dylan Hayes. We have compelling evidence that the domestic violence claims made by his wife were fabricated as part of a conspiracy to deny him parental rights." The judge studied Ellen over her reading glasses. "That's a serious allegation, counselor." "We're prepared to prove it," Ellen replied, signaling to Dylan to hand her the evidence binder they'd prepared. For the next 30 minutes, Ellen methodically laid out their case. The grocery store footage showing Leah uninjured, Tessa Lynn's sworn statement about Brian's attempted witness tampering, the neighbor's security footage, and printouts of the incriminating text messages from the burner phone. Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Quinn planned not only to fabricate domestic violence charges, but to flee the state with Mr. Hayes' daughter, Ellen concluded. Leah's attorney rose immediately. "Your Honor, the defense contests the authenticity of these messages. The phone in question was not recovered through proper legal channels. Furthermore, Mrs. Hayes has submitted medical records documenting her injuries." "Injuries she created with makeup," Dylan muttered, earning a warning glance from Ellen. "Additionally," Leah's attorney continued, "we have serious concerns about Mr. Hayes' mental state. Since being served with the restraining order, he has exhibited stalking behaviors, making my client fear for her safety and that of their child." The judge held up her hand. "I want to hear from Mrs. Hayes directly." Leah took the stand, the picture of a woman traumatized. Her voice quavered as she described a fictional history, small incidents that escalated, she claimed, until Dylan had finally snapped that night. "He grabbed me by the arms," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Threw me against the wall. When I tried to get away, he punched me across the face. I was terrified Maddie would wake up and see." Dylan's hands clenched into fists under the table. Every word a lie, every tear a performance. "And where is Mr. Quinn in all this?" the judge asked. "Brian is my life coach," Leah replied, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "He's been helping me work through my trauma. We became close during that process. He's been my support system through all of this." "And you're now claiming to be pregnant with Mr. Quinn's child?" Leah nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Almost 3 months along." Dylan couldn't help it. He made a sound of disgust. The judge's eyes flicked to him briefly before returning to Leah. "Mrs. Hayes, are you aware of the security footage showing you without injuries the day before you filed the police report?" Leah hesitated. "I covered the bruises with makeup. I didn't want anyone to know what was happening at home." The back and forth continued, with Ellen poking holes in Leah's story while Leah's attorney objected repeatedly. When Dylan finally took the stand, he fought to keep his voice steady as he told the truth about his marriage falling apart, about Brian's influence, about finding his abandoned truck and the burner phone. "Your Honor," he said at the end, "I've never laid a violent hand on my wife or anyone else. All I want is to see my daughter and clear my name." The judge studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Hayes, these are complex allegations on both sides. I'm inclined to order a full investigation before making any permanent custody decisions. In the meantime, Your Honor, Ellen interrupted, we'd like to call one more witness, Maddie's teacher, Catherine Wilson. Dylan's head snapped up. This wasn't part of their planned strategy. Catherine Wilson was a small woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She'd been teaching second grade at Westfield Elementary for 15 years. Miss Wilson, Ellen began, you've been Maddie Hayes' teacher for the past year. Can you describe her relationship with her father based on your observations? Catherine nodded. Maddie adores her father. He volunteered in our classroom twice a month, attended every parent conference, every performance. Maddie would light up whenever he came to pick her up. And did you ever observe any behavior from Maddie that might suggest she was afraid of her father or witnessing violence at home? Never, Catherine said firmly. Maddie was a happy, well-adjusted child. Was, Ellen pressed. Catherine hesitated. In the past few weeks, since she stopped coming to school regularly, I've seen concerning changes. When Mrs. Hayes brought her in to collect her things, Maddie seemed withdrawn, anxious. When I asked if she was okay, Mrs. Hayes answered for her. Objection, Leah's attorney called. Speculation. Sustained, the judge ruled. Please limit your testimony to direct observations, Miss Wilson. Catherine nodded. Last week, Mrs. Hayes enrolled Maddie in a different school. Before she left, Maddie gave me a drawing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of construction paper. She asked me to give it to her dad if I saw him. The bailiff brought the drawing to the judge, who examined it before passing it to Ellen, who then handed it to Dylan. His throat tightened. The crayon drawing showed 3 figures: a small girl with brown pigtails, Maddie, a woman with an angry red face, Leah, and a man with black hair standing apart from them, surrounded by what looked like a cage or box, Dylan. At the bottom, in a child's uneven letters, I miss Daddy. Your Honor, Ellen said quietly, this drawing corroborates our concern that Mrs. Hayes is engaging in parental alienation, telling Maddie negative things about her father to damage their relationship. The courtroom fell silent as the judge considered this new evidence. I've heard enough for today. I'm ordering a full psychiatric evaluation for the minor child to be conducted by a court-appointed therapist. Until that evaluation is complete, I'm modifying the custody arrangement. Mr. Hayes will have supervised visitation twice weekly. Dylan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It wasn't a full victory, but it was something. A chance to see Maddie again. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm appointing a guardian ad litem to represent the child's interests separately from either parent, and I'm ordering Mrs. Hayes not to remove the child from the county without court approval. As they left the courtroom, Dylan caught Brian's eye. The man's handsome face was tight with controlled fury. He whispered something to Leah before walking quickly away. This is just the beginning, Ellen cautioned Dylan as they headed for the parking garage. We need more evidence of their conspiracy. I'll get it, Dylan promised. Whatever it takes. The first supervised visit with Maddie took place 3 days later at a family services center downtown. Dylan arrived early, heart pounding with anticipation and fear. What if Maddie believed Leah's lies? What if she was afraid of him now? When the door opened and Maddie walked in, all his fears melted away. She broke into a run, launching herself into his arms with a cry of, Daddy! Dylan held her tight, breathing in the familiar smell of her apple shampoo, feeling her small arms around his neck. I missed you so much, Pumpkin, he finally managed. Maddie pulled back to look at him, her small face serious. Mommy said you were sick, that you might hurt us, but I told her that's not true. Dylan swallowed hard. Your mom and I are having some grown-up problems, but I promise you I would never, ever hurt you or her. Maddie nodded solemnly. I told her that. Then she got mad and said I couldn't talk about you anymore. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She and Brian want me to call him Dad now. I don't want to... Dylan's chest tightened with fury, but he kept his expression neutral, aware of the social worker observing them from the corner. You don't have to call anyone anything you don't want to, sweetheart. And I promise we're going to fix this. They spent the next hour playing board games and drawing pictures. Maddie told him about her new school. It's okay, but I miss my friends, and the small apartment where she was staying with Leah and Brian. My room doesn't have stars on the ceiling like at home. When their time was up and the social worker led Maddie away, she looked back over her shoulder and gave Dylan a smile that nearly broke his heart. Outside, Dylan leaned against his car, taking deep breaths to steady himself. They were poisoning his daughter's mind, trying to erase him from her life. And for what? So Brian could play daddy while he and Leah ran off to California with Dylan's child? He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice Brian approach until the man was right beside him. Touching scene in there, Brian said, his voice smooth as oil. Enjoy it while it lasts. Dylan straightened, keeping his distance. You're not supposed to be here. Free country, Brian shrugged. Just dropping Leah off to pick up the kid, thought I'd say hello. Stay away from my daughter, Dylan warned, his voice low. You and Leah can do whatever the hell you want with your lives, but leave Maddie out of it. Brian laughed, showing perfect white teeth. Little late for that, she's already starting to forget you. In another month, she'll be calling me Dad. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me carefully. You're nobody. A sad little man who couldn't keep his wife interested. You think you can knock us? He scoffed. I've got connections in this town you can't imagine. Judges, cops, child services, they all buy houses from me. Is that a threat? It's a reality check, Brian replied. Walk away. Let Leah divorce you. Give up custody. We'll even let you see the kid on Christmas if you behave. Dylan stared at him, almost in awe of the man's arrogance. Never gonna happen. Brian's handsome face twisted with contempt. Then get ready for war, because I'm just getting started ruining your life. As Brian turned to leave, Dylan called after him. Hey, Brian, congratulations on the baby. When's it due? Oh, wait, there is no baby, is there? Brian froze, then slowly turned back. You think you know so much? I know Leah bought a pregnancy test last week. Kind of odd for someone who's supposedly already pregnant, don't you think? The judge might find that interesting. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Brian's face. Then, his expression hardened. You'll regret this. I promise you that. Dylan watched him walk away, fighting the urge to follow and finish this now. But that wasn't the way. He needed to be smarter than them, needed to play their game, and win it. The following day, Dylan was back at his temporary maintenance job at a local apartment complex when his phone rang. Mr. Hayes, this is Detective Morales from the county sheriff's office. We need you to come in right away. Dylan's stomach dropped. What's this about? Just need to ask you some questions about your truck, sir. It was involved in an incident last night. An hour later, Dylan sat in a cramped interview room across from Detective Morales, a stocky man with tired eyes, and his partner, a younger woman with a severe bun. Your Ford F-150 was found abandoned at Miller's Creek last night, Morales explained. It had struck a guardrail, open container of whiskey in the vehicle. That wasn't me, Dylan said immediately. My truck was stolen weeks ago. I reported it missing. The female detective, Harris, according to her nameplate, raised an eyebrow. We have a witness who says they saw you driving erratically near there around midnight. That's impossible. I was in my motel room all night. Anyone who can verify that? Morales asked. Dylan hesitated. I was alone. The thing is, Mr. Hayes, Harris continued, this witness is pretty credible. Says they recognized you clearly. They're lying, Dylan insisted, or they're mistaken. I haven't driven that truck in weeks. Someone else has been using it. I know who, and I can prove it. We're listening, Morales said. Dylan took a deep breath and laid it all out. The domestic violence setup, finding the truck abandoned, the burner phone, Brian and Leah's plan. By the time he finished, both detectives were watching him with mixed expressions of skepticism and concern. That's quite a story, Harris said finally. Check the truck for fingerprints, Dylan replied. Mine won't be on the whiskey bottle. Check the phone records for that burner phone. The texts prove everything. We'll look into it, Morales promised, though his tone suggested he thought Dylan was either lying or delusional. 3 days later, Dylan was waiting for his second supervised visit with Maddie when Ellen called. The police just called, she said without preamble. They've arrested Brian Quinn. Dylan nearly dropped the phone. What? Why? They found evidence connecting him to the truck incident. Traffic camera footage showed someone matching his description leaving the scene, and they found his fingerprints on the whiskey bottle. A savage satisfaction coursed through Dylan. So they believe me now? They're definitely taking a closer look at your story, Ellen confirmed. This is good, Dylan, really good. I've already filed a motion to revisit the custody arrangement in light of this new evidence. When Maddie arrived for their visit, she seemed subdued. Her usual exuberance dimmed. Oh, what's wrong, pumpkin? Dylan asked as they settled at the small table with coloring books. Maddie glanced at the social worker, then whispered, Mommy and Brian were fighting. She was crying a lot. Then the police came and took Brian away. Dylan kept his face neutral. I'm sorry that was scary. Everything's going to be all right. Mommy said we might have to move away soon, Maddie continued, her voice small. I don't want to move. I want to go home with you. Dylan's heart soared and broke simultaneously. I want that too, sweetheart. After the visit, Dylan called Ellen again. Leah told Maddie they might be moving away soon. We need to stop them. I'll file for an emergency hearing today, Ellen promised. But Dylan, be careful. If they're getting desperate, there's no telling what they might do next. Ellen's warning proved prescient. That evening, as Dylan returned to his motel room, he sensed something was wrong before he even opened the door. It was slightly ajar, though he distinctly remembered locking it when he left. Cautiously, he pushed it open. The room had been ransacked. His clothes were scattered across the floor. The mattress was sliced open, and his evidence wall, the photos, maps, and notes documenting Brian and Leah's conspiracy, had been torn down, the papers ripped to shreds. Dylan surveyed the damage, his mind racing. They were trying to destroy his evidence. But they didn't know he had backups of everything. Photos on his cloud drive, copies with Ellen, the originals of the most important documents in a safety deposit box. He was about to call the police when movement in the parking lot caught his eye. A figure was walking quickly toward a car, a woman with familiar brown hair, Leah. Without thinking, Dylan ran outside, catching up to her just as she reached her car. Was this your idea or his? He demanded. Leah whirled around, eyes wide with genuine fear. Dylan, I don't know what you're talking about. Breaking into my room, destroying my things, setting me up again. His voice was low, controlled, but vibrating with anger. When does it end, Leah? What do you want from me? To his surprise, Leah's eyes filled with tears. Not the calculated performance from the courtroom, but real, messy crying. You don't understand, she said, voice breaking. It's all falling apart. The police found something on Brian's phone. They're saying he might have done things like this before. To other people. Dylan stared at her. What are you talking about? He had records from other states, other names. He told me he was helping me, that we were meant to be together. But now the police are saying he's done this before. Set up husbands, taken their money. She wiped at her tears angrily. They're investigating him for fraud, identity theft. I don't know what to do. Tell the truth, Dylan said simply. Tell the police, tell the judge that you made it all up, that you let him manipulate you into framing me. It's the only way to fix this. Leah shook her head frantically. I can't. I'll lose everything. My reputation, maybe even Maddie. You're going to lose her anyway when the truth comes out, Dylan said. And it will. The only question is how much damage you want to do first. Leah stared at him, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted... What? To punish me for not being exciting enough? For working too hard to keep a roof over our heads? To start over, she whispered. To be someone else. Someone better. Dylan laughed bitterly. Well, congratulations. You're definitely someone else now. He turned to go, then stopped. If you try to leave town with my daughter, I'll find you. That's a promise. You're sure about this? Ellen asked 2 days later, as they prepared to enter the courtroom for the emergency hearing. Once we present this evidence, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over. Dylan nodded grimly. It's been over for months. I just want my daughter back. And I want them to pay for what they did. The courtroom was more crowded this time. News of Brian Quinn's arrest had spread, attracting local reporters and curious onlookers. Dylan spotted Leah sitting with her attorney. Brian was notably absent, still in county lockup after being denied bail. As the hearing began, Ellen laid out their case methodically. The falsified misuse claims, the staged pregnancy, the truck incident, and finally the bombshell, Brian Quinn's true identity and history. Your Honor, Ellen said, the police investigation has revealed that Brian Quinn is actually Robert Brian Quinlan, a con artist with outstanding warrants in Nevada and Colorado. His modus operandi is consistent. He targets women in vulnerable marriages, convinces them to frame their husbands for mistreatment, then helps them liquidate assets before disappearing with both the woman and the money. The judge's eyebrows rose. And you can verify this information? The investigating officer is here to testify, Ellen confirmed, gesturing to Detective Morales, who stood at the back of the courtroom. For the next hour, the detective outlined the evidence against Brian or Robert. The fingerprints on the whiskey bottle, the traffic camera footage, the discovery of 3 different identification documents in his possession, and the testimony of 2 previous sufferers from other states. Throughout the testimony, Leah grew increasingly agitated, whispering frantically to her attorney. Finally, as the detective finished, she stood abruptly. "I need to speak," she announced, her voice shaking. "I need to tell the truth." Her attorney tried to pull her back, but Leah shook her off. "No, I'm done with lies." The judge studied her carefully. "Mrs. Hayes, are you sure you want to make a statement without consulting your attorney?" "Yes," Leah said firmly. I lied about the mistreatment. Dylan never touched me, never hurt me. The bruises were makeup. Brian, Robert, showed me how to make them look real. He said it was the only way I could keep Maddie if we left." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Dylan sat perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. "He said no one would believe me otherwise," Leah continued, her voice small. "That judges always side with mothers in custody cases, unless there's something really wrong with them. He said a few photos, a police report, and we'd be free to go anywhere, start over." "And the pregnancy claim?" the judge asked, her voice icy. Leah shook her head. "Another lie. There was never a baby." The judge's expression was thunderous. "Mrs. Hayes, do you understand the seriousness of what you've done? False police reports, perjury, attempting to deprive a parent of their legal rights. These are serious offenses." "I understand," Leah whispered. "I'll accept whatever punishment the court decides. I need my daughter to know someday that I told the truth in the end." The judge turned to Dylan. "All's Mr. C. Hayes, in light of these revelations, I'm immediately vacating the restraining order and temporary custody arrangement. Your daughter will be returned to your custody today." Dylan's vision blurred with tears of relief. "Thank you, Your Honor. As for you, Mrs. Hayes," the judge continued, "I'm ordering a full psychiatric evaluation before determining any visitation rights. And I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges." As the gavel came down, the courtroom erupted in chatter. Dylan sat motionless, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in his fortunes. After weeks of fighting, he had won. Ellen squeezed his shoulder. "It's over, Dylan. You did it." But it wasn't quite over. As they left the courtroom, Dylan found himself face to face with Leah in the hallway. She looked smaller somehow, her confident demeanor replaced by something broken and uncertain. "Dylan," she began, voice barely audible over the crowd. "I'm so sorry. Brian came along, promising adventure, promising a new life." She trailed off. "I let myself believe whatever he told me, including that you deserved what we were doing." Dylan felt nothing but a vast, empty weariness. "I hope you get help, Leah. For Maddie's sake, if nothing else." As he turned to leave, Leah called after him, "Will you tell her I love her?" Dylan paused. "I'll tell her the truth, that her mother made terrible mistakes, but that she loves her. The rest will be up to you to prove." The house felt both strange and familiar as Dylan carried Maddie's sleeping form up the stairs. After the hearing, after the paperwork, after the tearful reunion, his daughter had finally fallen asleep on the drive home. Their home where she belonged. He laid her gently in her bed, still decorated with the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that they had placed together last summer. Each constellation had a story he had told her. The Great Bear, Orion the Hunter, Andromeda the Princess. "Daddy," Maddie murmured sleepily as he tucked the blanket around her. "I'm here, Pumpkin," he whispered. "I'm home. Are you staying?" "Yes, I'm staying. Forever." She smiled, eyes still closed. "Good. I miss the stars." "Me too," Dylan said softly. "Me too." Downstairs, he walked through the quiet rooms, noting the changes. Leah's things gone, some furniture missing, dusty squares on the wall where pictures had hung. The physical evidence of his family's unraveling. He poured himself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. Dozens of messages from friends, neighbors, colleagues, all expressing shock at the revelations, offering support, asking how they could help. The same people who had avoided his eyes in the grocery store, who had believed the worst of him without question. Dylan set the phone down. He would answer them tomorrow. Tonight, he just wanted to be in his house with his daughter, rebuilding what had been so nearly destroyed. A text from Ellen appeared. Brian denied bail again. His lawyer is pushing for a plea deal. Leah's psychiatric evaluation is scheduled for next week. I'll keep you posted. He replied with a simple "thank you," then turned off his phone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, helping Maddie process what had happened, dealing with the legal aftermath, rebuilding their life together. But tonight, in this moment, Dylan allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. He had taken back what was his. Not just his daughter, his home, his reputation, but his power, his future. And no one would ever take them from him again. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters, their cameras and microphones jutting like weapons. Dylan slipped through a side entrance Ellen had arranged, avoiding the media circus entirely. "Smart move coming through the garage," Ellen said, guiding him through the service corridor. "Quinn's supporters have been hunting witnesses all morning." Dylan's jaw tightened. Supporters? After everything that came out? Cult-like loyalty. 3 of his previous sufferers received lethal threats for testifying. Ellen checked her watch. "We're cutting it close. They're bringing him in now." They emerged into the courtroom just as bailiffs escorted Brian Quinn, now officially Robert Quinlan, through the prisoner entrance. Gone was the smooth-talking life coach. In his place stood a gaunt, hollow-eyed man in County Orange who scanned the room like a cornered animal. When he spotted Dylan, his expression transformed into something feral. "You're finished, Hayes!" Quinn lunged against his restraints with unexpected strength, dragging a bailiff forward several steps. "You hear me? This changes nothing!" The outburst sent the courtroom into chaos. As security wrestled Quinn back under control, Dylan remained perfectly still, his expression unchanged. This wasn't the calculated intimidation he'd expected. This was raw, unhinged rage. Judge Stanton slammed her gavel repeatedly. "One more outburst, Mr. Quinlan, and you'll be removed from your own sentencing." Dylan leaned toward Ellen. "That wasn't for show. He genuinely thinks he's the sufferer here?" Ellen nodded grimly. "Narcissists usually do." The proceedings moved swiftly after that. Prosecutor Chen laid out the state's case with clinical precision, not just the fraud and manipulation of Leah Hayes, but the pattern across 3 states, the previous conviction in Florida, the offshore accounts where he'd funneled nearly $2 million from vulnerable families. "What the state has only recently discovered," Chen said, sliding a document to the bench, "is evidence that Mr. Quinlan was planning to abduct Madison Hayes permanently. We've recovered airline tickets purchased under false identities for himself, Leah Hayes, and the child. One way to Sao Paulo, Brazil." Murmurs erupted throughout the courtroom. This was news to Dylan, who felt ice water replace the blood in his veins. Ellen gripped his arm, steadying him. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "search warrants executed on Mr. Quinlan's storage unit revealed a cache of documents. Blank birth certificates, passport materials, and instructions for creating new identities for minors." Quinn's attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, this evidence wasn't included in discovery. We demand—" "It was filed in supplemental discovery last week, Counselor," Chen interrupted. "Perhaps you should check your inbox more regularly." The defense attorney's rebuttal was desperate. Childhood trauma, mental health issues, promises of restitution. Throughout it all, Quinn stared at the back of Dylan's head with unblinking intensity. When Quinn rose to speak on his own behalf, the performance was masterful, his voice breaking at precisely the right moments, his expressions calibrated for maximum sympathy. "I've made terrible mistakes, Your Honor. I was blinded by my feelings for Leah, convinced I was helping a woman and child escape an abusive situation." He turned, addressing Dylan directly. "I truly believed you were hurting them, Mr. Hayes. I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry for the pain I've caused." Judge Stanton wasn't moved. "Mr. Quinlan, save your performance. This court has heard from other women you truly believed needed your help, all coincidentally with substantial assets you helped liquidate before disappearing." She delivered the sentence with cold precision. 12 years, 4 more than the prosecution had requested, with no possibility of parole for 7, plus full restitution to all sufferers. As the bailiffs moved to lead him away, Quinn's mask of contrition vanished. He twisted toward Dylan, his face contorted with hatred. "Your daughter will always wonder, Hayes," he hissed, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Part of her will always believe what her mother told her about you." Dylan stood, meeting Quinn's gaze squarely. "My daughter knows exactly who I am. And now, thanks to this case, so does everyone who ever Googles your name." Quinn's eyes narrowed in confusion, then widened in dawning horror as Dylan continued. "Every potential sufferer, every future target, they'll find the case files I've made public. The testimony, the evidence, your methods, your aliases, everything. You're done. Not just legally, but functionally. The color drained from Quinn's face as he realized the implications. His ability to con, to manipulate, to reinvent himself, all demolished by a digital footprint he could never escape. "Take him away," Judge Stanton ordered, observing the exchange with something like approval in her eyes. As Quinn was dragged out, still processing what Dylan had done, Ellen turned to her client in astonishment. "When did you set that up? The website, the documentation, the day after his arrest." Dylan watched the door close behind his daughter's would-be abductor. "Insurance policy. I wasn't taking any chances." 3 weeks later, Dylan arrived home to find an unmarked envelope in his mailbox. No return address, no postmark, hand-delivered. Inside was a single flash drive and a note in unfamiliar handwriting. He wasn't working alone. "Watch your back." Dylan took the security precaution of checking the drive on an old laptop disconnected from the internet. What he found made his blood run cold. Surveillance photos of Maddie at school, at the park, at her therapist's office, all taken within the past week. He called Ellen immediately, who arrived within the hour, bringing with her a private investigator she trusted. "This isn't random persecution," the investigator said, examining the photos. "This is professional work. Telephoto lens, multiple angles, established patterns." He pointed to timestamps. "They've been watching her for at least 2 weeks." Dylan paced the living room. "Quinn's still locked up. Who else would—" "Quinn had money," Ellen interjected. "A lot of money we haven't traced. Offshore accounts, cryptocurrency. He could have hired someone. Or it could be a partner we don't know about," the investigator added. "Someone willing to continue where he left off." Dylan made the decision instantly. "We're leaving tonight. I have a cabin in the mountains. Off-grid, no digital footprint. My brother bought it under his name years ago." Ellen looked startled. "Dylan, running might not be—" "I'm not running," Dylan cut her off, pulling a small metal case from his desk drawer. Inside was a GPS tracker and a small device that looked like a USB battery pack. "I'm setting a trap." The investigator raised an eyebrow. "Where did you get that equipment?" "When your child has been targeted once, you prepare for it to happen again." Dylan's expression was grim. "I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now it has." The mountain cabin was rustic but secure, solar-powered, with satellite internet and a clear view of the only access road. Dylan had prepared it months ago as a contingency, stocking it with supplies and installing discreet security measures around the perimeter. Maddie adapted to their sudden vacation with surprising resilience, treating it as an adventure. Dylan maintained her homeschooling routine while keeping constant watch on the security feeds displayed on his tablet. On the 5th day, his phone rang. Ellen, her voice tense. "They took the bait. Police just arrested a woman trying to access your house. She had sedatives, fake ID for Maddie, and a detailed extraction plan." Dylan moved away from where Maddie was reading, lowering his voice. "Who is she?" "That's the interesting part. She's Quinn's ex-wife from Florida, the one who testified against him in his previous fraud case. According to preliminary questioning, he's been blackmailing her for years." "So she flipped on him in court, but was still working with him?" "More complicated than that. She claims Quinn has her daughter, took her during a custody exchange 3 years ago. Said she'd never see the girl again unless she did exactly what he asked." Dylan felt sick. Another child. Police are executing search warrants on 3 properties connected to Quinn's aliases right now. After ending the call, Dylan sat heavily on the cabin's front step, watching Maddie through the window as she built a fort from couch, cushions, blissfully unaware of the danger that had been averted. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you're clever. This isn't over." Dylan didn't bother tracing it. Instead, he took a photo of the peaceful mountain view and sent it as his only reply. Let Quinn rage from his prison cell. Let him threaten and scheme. Dylan had outmaneuvered him at every turn since that first custody hearing. The cabin door creaked open behind him, and Maddie emerged with a drawing in hand. "Look, Daddy," she said, holding up her artwork. "It's our fort against the bad guys." The picture showed their cabin surrounded by what appeared to be a force field, with cartoon-like villains unable to break through. "It's perfect, Pumpkin," he said, pulling her into a hug. "Nothing's getting through our shields." 2 months later, back in their home with new security and Quinn's network dismantled, Dylan received the final report from the FBI task force that had taken over the investigation. They'd located 3 more children, all taken by Quinn from previous relationships under various pretexts. all now safely returned to their families. The case had expanded beyond anything Dylan had imagined, revealing Quinn not just as a con artist, but as the architect of a sophisticated illegal custody manipulation scheme, targeting vulnerable families through his so-called coaching business. Leah sat across from him at the kitchen table, the report open between them. Her supervised visitation had continued through the crisis, though under even stricter protocols. The haunted look in her eyes as she read the details of what she'd nearly facilitated was punishment enough. "I would have let him take her," she whispered, voice hollow with the terrible knowledge. "If you hadn't fought so hard, if the judge hadn't granted that emergency hearing." Dylan closed the file. "But I did fight, and she's safe. That's what matters now." Leah met his gaze, tears streaming down her face. "Can you ever forgive me?" "No way," he said finally. "I just make sure it never happens again." Outside, Maddie played in the yard under the watchful eye of her therapist, who'd come for their regular session. Her laughter floated through the open window, the sound of a child who, against all odds, had not been broken by the storm that had nearly swept her away. The security panel on Dylan's phone showed all systems clear, all perimeters secure. Quinn remained in maximum security, his sentencing enhanced by the new charges, his network exposed and dismantled, his sufferers found and saved. Dylan watched his daughter through the window, her face tilted toward the sun, and allowed himself to believe in something he had almost lost forever, a future where the shadows could no longer touch them.